of Sydney CBD. I handle all the wine-based decisions that go on through the store and online. And sitting next to me is Scott Fitzsimons, cleaner.
I know that.
Spirits, whiskey, gin expert here at the Oak Barrel as well.
How are you?
Good. I wasn't really sure where to go from there. Actually.
Well,
The whole intro thing is getting...
after you did say the word expert after my name, you did get a little bit scared about what was going on and how you move on from that, which is fair enough.
Expert and
Now,
but,
I don't know if you can see this at home, but sitting next to Joey here, there's a significant red tinge, I think, to you. Your skin's a little bit...
There is,
a little bit more bruised than normal. Now, Joey, why would that be? Have you been catching some sun over the long weekend?
Well, yeah, so at risk of probably admitting that I did have another holiday very frequently after I admitted I had a holiday a few weeks ago. I had the weekend off, as per se. But I was lucky enough to link up with a good friend of mine, Tony Zafarakos, who is the sort of decision maker, winemaker, owner of Ari's Natural Wine, based down in just south of Barrel, Sutton Forest, there near Mossvale, and yeah, got a lovely message Thursday night, just saying that obviously with everything that's been going on in New South Wales country, this was always going to be a very touch and go kind of vintage for a lot of grape growers and winemakers out in that area, and believe it or not, all a bunch of varieties off the same vineyard had come to ripen at the same time. So the call to arms went out, and yeah, we went down there on Thursday night, met up with those guys, then made the late night drive out to Canaldra, to Rosnay Organic Farms, where a lot of the Chardonnay and Shiraz was ready to go in their eyes. And yeah, so first thing Friday morning, up 5 o'clock, picking, basically taking about 1.5 tons of each there with those guys. So Rosnay is certified biodynamic, one of the few out in Canaldra and out in New South Wales as a whole, and just really interesting kind of outlook to see those sort of harvesting decisions, those picking decisions, where you will look at a lot of other growers around New South Wales that are weeks and weeks and weeks away from picking, but we were picking Chardonnay, Shiraz, looking at Grenache, looking at Mourvedre, looking at Brie, looking at all those sorts of varietals. But it was definitely sort of go time.
And
for that area.
Was there a reason behind that, or is it just the luck of the draw sometimes?
Well, so I've done a bit of picking in that way before, but not to the degree that we did this weekend. But the recurring theme that came up that entire time was acidity.
Yeah, okay.
So, whilst I'm definitely not qualified to educate in any way, but Beaumet was the main thing that
listen to us
these,
anyway.
Yeah, that these guys were looking for. And very, 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 very roughly, Beaumet will often translate to the sort of degree of alcohol that you'll see in your wine. Mm-hmm. So we were picking both Chardonnay and Shiraz at about the sort of 10.5 Beaumet level.
Yep.
Which then sort of brings in, an idea of having a light, very, very... we were picking a lot... the Shiraz was for rosé, so you do want that lighter, more sort of vibrant, juicy element. And then the Chardonnay as well, a decision is still to be made on whether they were going, skin contact or anything like that. But yeah, just a really, really awesome experience to be a part of, to just kind of see everything coming together from, dirt to vine to truck to winery to pressing to, not to bottle yet, but yeah, very soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things you hear so much about wine is picking grapes, And obviously that's if you want to get the grapes off the vines, you have to get them off the vines. And I think a lot of people will have visited wineries in the past and either seen maybe this time of year with grapes on vines, or seen vines completely barren with nothing on them, through winter and that sort of thing. But potentially not a lot of people have seen the actual production of picking. And obviously you can get big harvesters that run straight through in between the vines and pick them up. But that idea of hand picking just to sort of explain, like, that is literally going out with your hands and picking grapes off a vine, like picking fruits off a tree. And is there certain things that you have to look for? Someone who's done a little bit of it, but not a huge amount. What were they telling you to look for in that sort of space?
Well, so that's a very good question, and it has a very, very simple answer. And what I was kind of have been told many times before when doing this sort of thing is if you wouldn't eat it, don't pick it.
Okay.
Yeah. And luckily, sort of out that.
And if you would eat it, please don't, because we need it.
Yeah. I mean, you can probably eat as many grapes as you want there, and still not really put a chunk in the harvest. But they were saying that luckily, obviously, at Canaldra Way, the way that the rains had fallen, sort of either side of ripening levels, the disease was quite low, or the disease pressure was quite low. So there wasn't a lot of, I've been in vineyards before where you can sort of see disease setting in on certain grapes, and that's when you have to be quite decisive about which ones you pick, which ones you don't. But we were carefree this weekend, cool. So it was pretty much up, have your toast and smash out a row or two.
Yep.
Get into the truck and back you go.
Go do another one.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, obviously you're working with a winemaker who sort of invited you out there, and you went to a vineyard where they get grapes from. Who's making the call on when things need to be picked? Like for that lighter, slightly, managing by acidity side, is it the vineyard calling that, or is it the winemaker going, I want this, and the vineyard calls, hey, they're almost ready, come and pick them?
So it's the winemaker.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely the winemaker, and especially this time of year where they know things are going to get pretty intense. Like people are. Like they're wired, they're ready to go at all times of the day. Hence the sort of last minute, can you come out here, help us get this off, sort of thing. But we very, very exciting time for this vineyard in particular, with the rain that fell out in Canaldra last week, and just falling at the particularly right time just to brighten everything up.
Yeah.
Everything looks outstanding.
You're awesome.
There were, like if we could have gotten more, we could have gotten more. That sort of thing. It was just really, really special. Sort of harvesting time. As a strange place with everything else going on around, that was kind of one of the diamonds in the rough of vineyards.
Yeah, quite a rare feel-good story potentially about what's been going on. Because you probably saw a little bit of it as well, travelling down there.
So we got hit in the Bundanoon fire early Saturday morning, which was just Friday morning, just bringing grapes back from Canaldra. But yeah, it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and that's what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
So that was my weekend. Obviously, just seeing how Tony works, and really getting an understanding of the vineyards and his winemaking processes as well.
And his stuff we'll see that, whatever it is, probably before the end of the year in bottle?
Yeah, we should see a fair bit of it pretty soon.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, just amazing experience. Cleanliness is probably the one thing I took away from that whole trip. I'm not a particularly clean person, house-wise.
Yeah.
But you step foot into Tony's winery.
Yeah.
Spotless.
Well, I think, when you're making whatever you're making, sanitization and things, it just becomes such a big point of everything. Yeah. And particularly when you're fermenting, whether it be grapes or grain, any contamination can ruin harvest, can ruin brews, can ruin your whole season basically. But no, it was good.
But yeah, and you were in the same part of the world.
Yeah, roughly. Fun enough, I didn't realise you were going to be as close as Canaldra. We probably could have shook hands on the way past, but spent the majority of the weekend in Dubbo from late last week. Got out there at about midday, 1 o'clock on Thursday, which was great because we walked straight into a dust storm, which was quite interesting. So it was really interesting because you could see it build from just outside of Bathurst, and it was just so dry. And even though they did get the rain that we sort of saw in Sydney about a week ago as well, that sort of came across, everything's just so dry up there that just any bit of wind and just throwing dust into the air just across paddocks. And then by the time you got to the outskirts of Orange, it was a little bit darker. And then by the time you got to Dubbo and stood outside, you're sort of getting hit with hot wind and dust. It was fine. It was a bit different to the one apparently they got a week ago, where they saw it coming and day turned to night like that, and then half an hour later it was sort of lights were off again. But this one just hung around all day, and duct tape around all the doors and all the windows to try and keep it out. But there was no. It was like I remember getting into the hotel room. Not very nice. Blue Gum. Highly recommend staying at the Blue Gum if you're ever in Dubbo. Beautiful, clean, white, everything, just for me to walk in and take a shirt off and a sweaty shirt off and just put dust everywhere. Run my hand through my hair and everywhere, things went everywhere. But really great few nights going to hang out at the establishment bar, where we ran a series of tribute nights to different spirits. We did gin on the Thursday night, whiskey on the Friday night, and tequila on the Saturday night. We've got a new little room out the back there called the Smuggler's Den. Just a really small little cocktail bar in town, but room for about 25 people. It fits in the back room. We squeezed 25 in just for the whiskey one, and just sort of went through and spoke about great booze and just had a really good time. And it was, you never know out somewhere like Dubbo whether there's the thirst for that sort of spirits, particularly spirits that I might like whiskey, but I don't know any of the six that that dude from the Oak Barrels picked, because he's picked weird things on purpose, and I did pick weirder things on purpose. But went down really, really well. I met some great people. I met some people who've come to a few of the tastings now. A few people came in from parks and that sort of thing for the night, which is really cool. Lots of fun. Checked out the new brewery, Devil's Elbow, out there, which is a big joint in sort of, I guess you call it East Dubbo on the way in, the big sort of industrial site there. It's a big joint. Brand new, about 6 months old, I think, but very impressive. Doing some quite classic beers there. Nosy Bob, which is tribute to the old hagman from Dubbo Jail. He didn't have a nose, so Nosy Bob, which was their sort of red IPA. Probably my pick. That big sort of caramel sort of nose. But really, really great to sort of, get out there. And it was funny. I don't know if you got rain, but we got a splash of rain on the Friday Arvo, and just sort of, like tiny little bit of red on bomb.gov rolling over and just poured down and then poured out. But it is quite amazing how. And I was talking to the bar owners at the establishment that not only does it just give things to the ground, it just seems to lift the spirits. Because on Friday, as soon as the rain finished on Friday, people just out walking the streets again. They were saying had a pretty, probably quieter December, early Jan than they thought. But if you got rain on the night before, bar will be packed the night after, which is quite interesting. A quick g'day to Jason there, who's tuning into the live stream. And yes, if you do have any questions at any point, say g'day, and we will do our best to answer them. As we've been chatting, we've just been drinking a bit of Grifter Pale Ale from just up the road here. Where are they? They're technically Marrickville, aren't they?
Well, so when I
Enmore Road,
Enmore Road, When I first started the Oak Barrel, I moved into a house right on the Enmore Road. You could probably hit the Grifter Brewery with a rock from my house.
So you're saying you moved into Grifter when you moved to Sydney?
Yeah. I did very well, and it's
but yes,
one of the stars of Sydney brewing at the moment.
Yeah, just a clean, sort of obviously golden coloured, lightly hopped pale ale. Probably didn't tell you guys this, particularly if you're from Sydney watching. You've had a fair few of these, I'm sure.
It is also the first beer mention that we've done on 14 episodes of this podcast. So
yeah, we've probably been drinking beers underneath the table. We forgot to talk about it. But so obviously we did a bit of travel. I ended up doing the ride by train and by buses because I wanted a few stops. And being a booze tourist generally, I try not to put myself in any position where you might be over the limit. Knowing full well that we were going to visit some distilleries, and if I made
just sold the car.
Don't own a car. I live in Sydney as well, so what the hell do you need a car for? So knowing full well that was going to be breweries and sort of late-ish nights and early mornings and potentially wineries and Orange involved as well, decided not to drive. But it was excellent sort of trip back, but sort of ended up just getting down a little bit of a rabbit hole on the old news articles and going back a few years talking about some drinks and particularly wine, which is a world that obviously, Joe, you'd have a little bit more experience with, but in opposed to, I've tried some very, very expensive, rare, unique, exclusive whiskies, but not as many of those top-end, French wines, Burgundies, Bordeaux's, Screaming Eagles, all that sort of stuff from around the world that is quite expensive, but really well thought after.
I'm going to share it on my phone.
I have no idea. Go to you scroll down.
Yep.
Yeah, go into the video.
Might as well just do it live now.
Yeah. Yeah, when you get it live, it'll come up. Anyway, we're sort of talking.
I'll get it soon.
Well, and we're sort of thinking about what those wines mean, what those whiskies mean. When you open a really expensive or exclusive or unique or rare or any of these sort of storied words, what does that actually mean to a drinker and, to someone like myself who drinks a lot of whiskey? So what I thought I'd do tonight, without necessarily having a theme, I've got some bottles of whiskey behind me you probably can't see that we'll crack into a little bit later, and I've picked out some stuff. I don't have a lot left, and we'll talk about that and I want to talk about it in the context of wine and stuff as well. But we do have a white wine, Joe, that you've sort of picked up on a bit of a tip-off that we might do first while it stays cold.
We do, yeah. So just jumping into the first one here now. It kind of, I find wine is a very, very sort of busy topic for me here, which is a lot of, we adore wines from Australia, drink them all the time, really obsess over certain regions, certain parts of Australia, really try to get to know what's going on, because that's obviously, our key kind of go-to for people coming through the shop and stuff like that. And then, I obviously have a very deep love for French wine, especially Burgundy, especially wines from the Rhone, wines from Jura, those sorts of areas. I also am now indulging a lot in Italian wine and that sort of thing. And I just realized that, well, actually, the story of this wine comes from a good customer of ours who is a young waitress for I actually don't know the restaurant that she works at. She works at a restaurant very close by. Always tells me the name of it, and I forget every time.
Actually, you were going to give her a plug. And
yeah. I was just about to. And then she came in just before Christmas and asked me for initially a wine from the Canary Islands.
Yep.
And I was like, we didn't have any wine from the Canary Islands in the store at that time. We have in the past. And then she gets, you should try this wine, you should try this wine. And it's definitely a line we'll get a couple of times a week. Try this, it's the best, it's the best, it's the best. But she was like overjoyed at the idea of being able to talk about this wine. It's the best wine, it's the best wine you've ever tried. It's the most amazing wine. If you get it, I'll buy all of it. Kind of thing.
Yep, so here we are. So
yeah.
So we're sorry you can't buy all of it.
Oh yeah, no. So we did go about getting this wine in, tracked down the distributor. They only spoke very highly of it as well. I haven't heard of the producer before. I'm aware of the varieties that are kind of in this mix. Not too familiar with the island it comes from. It's from Tenerife.
Yep.
In the Canary Islands. And yeah, it was just she was just so passionate about this wine, and sort of spoke to me the way that I would speak to people about wines as well, which was really going over the line there. And so I thought I'd track a bit down, got some in, put a bottle aside, never tried it. Thought we'd just give it a go on, might as well one of these.
And this is going to be a little bit of an interesting topic before we dive into this, because normally we bring wines and whiskies and spirits and things to the table which we are passionate about and we've fallen in love with, and because we've fallen in love, we've gone and found out as much information as possible.
Yeah.
And we have lots to talk about. But often, when wines are being presented to us, we're trying them for the first time, we're going by flavour, and then we'll go and find it out. So we're at the very start of this journey, which is sort of where these tastings came from initially. It was just us discovering things together.
Well, this is it. This is kind of the rawest I can get, is I've just kind of, I took this wine on off the back of a customer that was, I had a lot of respect for and valued her palate, and it's gone well so far. And I've never tried it, so we're gonna open a bottle here. But yeah, I know it's from Northern Tenerife. It's about 90% Palomino variety, sherry variety. It's about 6% PX, Pedro Jimenez as well. But these are both being fermented to be dry wines. And then the other 4% is just complete field blend.
Yeah, right.
Kind of mess up.
So I mean, that in itself is quite interesting. Obviously, when we think of those varietals, particularly Pedro Jimenez, we think of sherry.
Yeah.
I mean, while you do get dry sherries, we do think of associate sherry with sweetness. Does it happen often that those sort of grapes? I know we see like a lot of muscat being used as well for drier styles.
Yeah, I think they're like all the time.
Yeah, okay.
100% all the time. These sorts of wines being made. I just don't think they just don't see us.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Was like I'm kind of I was kind of looking like researching this wine and looking through it and just saying like, oh, okay, you know, it's obviously an excellent wine and we're going to try it soon, but why does it sit on the shelf with the oak barrel kind of thing? And it's obviously exceptional, but I don't think there's anyone sitting in the northern coast of Tenerife going, oh, I really hope it makes it in Sydney.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Where I just think like this is the way that they make wine. That's the way they've made wine for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's just come out to be exceptional.
Yeah. You take a sip there. I'm going to ask you a question from Mike Barber, which I just read in my head and have absolutely no idea the answer to. What are your thoughts on the new scientific findings stating that Moscato has been used as the basis for the coronavirus vaccine? To be honest, Mike, I haven't done enough research because I have been out west talking about this. I know that about where the virus is and where it's going, but don't know too much about this sort of stuff. Joey, have you heard anything about that?
No.
No, okay. So Mike...
I haven't done a lot of reading on that.
Mike Barber, thank you for your question. We have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Not a clue. So sounds like quite an interesting question, so I will look into that afterwards. But right now, no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm lost. I mean, it's high in sugar.
Yeah. That question will be copy and pasted into Google once we finish stuff. But something we might know a little bit more on. Now that you've taken your first sip of that, I've got my first impressions. What are yours?
Well, so for me, we're a larger store, I guess, but we're not a massive store. So when it comes to our store and our sort of wine delegation areas, our Spanish whites just kind of sit in like a little, 8 to 10 wide bottle of Spanish whites. Whereas, I think that in my experience, you could almost dedicate an entire section to the Canary Islands, if that makes sense. So, trying to funnel this sort of wine into a section of Spanish white wine does make sense, because I know what Albarino tastes like. I know what White Rioja tastes like. You can kind of put those into certain categories. This just doesn't fit anything. Yeah. Because I don't think that there's a region or there's an area to fit. It's
Am I going to review Fernet? Is that a trick question? There's going to be a whole episode dedicated to Fernet. Matt Brown, that's definitely going to happen.
What's the wine? So sorry. The wine is.
I might actually just write it down as well so people can see it.
Suertes del Marqués Trenzado. So Suertes del Marqués have about a 3-tier production system in their wines, ranging from single vineyard stuff all the way down to sort of entry level. This would be what they would consider their village level or entry level wine. Trenzado is a testament to the way that they actually train their vines. So I don't know if we'll be able to get close enough to the camera, but maybe we can. So Trenzado.
Thank you. Facebook has lovely tried to just translate what I just wrote into luck of the Marqués braided.
Yeah, so, kind of exactly that. Yeah. So they Thanks,
Facebook.
They will braid their vines together in a very specific way, in order to get the style of crop that they like. So the vines will almost sort of challenge each other, but you will also limit contact with the sun in that relevance. So because obviously Tenerife being a very hot place, you'll train your vines together to get large bunches or generous bunches without exactly just over-ripening everything and burning it. That is about the extent that I know of this wine. Yeah. So but just off the bat, incredibly expressive.
Yeah, it's got that real aromatic smelliness, a bit of earth to it.
Lots of it's almost like, not in a bad way, but Sauvignon Blanc-esque on the nose. It's that real gooseberry, really ripe passion fruit.
Yeah, I've got a little bit more like semi-on rubberiness,
Yeah.
that sort of thing as well.
So no, but about a good chunk of it goes into concrete, about 70%,
Yeah, okay, right.
which will have that sort of porous oxidative character,
Yeah.
and then the rest to very, very old oak
Yep. Yeah.
for about 9 months.
Yeah, okay. It's like definitely European though. Like it is from that world. I don't think there's anything like it you can find in Australia that tastes like that. You know,
So is it European being basically off the coast of Africa?
well, yeah, but technically yes. So I still win.
Yeah.
How many North African grapes are there?
I don't know, probably a couple.
Yeah, sitting around. Palate though is a little bit greener.
Yeah.
Not overly minerally, but
Just like, yeah, it's just like all of that like aromatic spice.
yeah, there's a lot going on there. I think
There's
you're
a
right
lot,
to say
yeah.
it's expressive.
Yeah.
This is a big wine. You said it's sort of their village, their entry level. So in the theme of, I think we call this things that are too expensive for us to drink, this might actually be affordable for us to drink. What sort of price are we talking about for that?
So $50 on the
$50,
shelf,
yeah.
coming down to about 41, 42 at members in a six. But yeah, like just a wine I was completely, not really familiar with. But like it's actually surprising me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea what to expect, to be honest, because I hadn't been in that conversation that you'd had with the customer. So,
But I think you can kind of see like someone sitting down tasting this and going, yeah, okay, this is exactly what I want. Because it's like, it's not a wine to please everybody, but it is certainly like a wine that will sort of kick a lot of goals, if that's your sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's big. It's very unique. If this is what you're looking for, then that's exactly what you're looking for, and nothing else will be close to what you were looking for.
I can't think of anything that I would put this against.
No.
Realistically, in terms of flavour, like lots of spice, good, like really, really rich acidity.
Green curry.
Green
maybe?
curry, yeah, like almost like that really ripe asparagus type thing.
Yes,
Which isn't a typically favoured note in wine, but
as Tony Hancock would say, asparagus and hand it around as a gourmet starter. If anyone's a Tony Hancock fan out there, going back to 40s,
you don't like
40s, 50s British comedy.
The oak doesn't play any character. Like it's just all fruit.
I would have never guessed it was oak in that.
Well, there's just super old oak.
Yeah, the little bit that is old. Yeah, I guess. Would have never have picked it.
Just like lots of spice, lots of that bell pepper characteristic.
Yeah, not quite capsicum though. I don't think.
No,
it's asparagus or something like that rather than.
It's a pretty cool wine.
Yeah,
I'm quite happy with that.
I think this is one as well that'll evolve if we put this aside for half an hour and finish it up afterwards, or come back to it, in 10-15 minutes. I mean, because we've only just taken the top of it as well. There's a lot to go in that. Yeah, I mean the Canary Islands is obviously this is a little bit different, but the Canary Islands is has a real cult following for wine production. People, love it and they'll stay with it and they'll venture not far from that sort of part of the world. But it's a very old, historic place for wine growing as well. Bit of rum as well comes from the Canaries.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not the world's finest rum from what I've experienced, but a little bit of quite good stuff comes from there. Yeah.
Well, I quite like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a wine that you need to get your head around before approaching it, but it's just spicy, it's just energetic, it's vibrant, super youthful, it really carries that grassy characteristic with it.
Because we didn't have a vintage. Do we have a vintage?
17.
2017.
Yeah. So, what, 3 years smaller now?
Yep.
Just on. But yeah, I think it's cool. I really liked. I mean, this is how people made sherry grapes before they made sherry. It's something else. I mean, that's what Palomino will do if you get it to that angle, or it's what PX will.
be.
Back on.
We're back.
We are back.
Sorry that brief halt in proceedings. And Joey, what you just said was, should be written down on stone, blocks for eternity because it was so good.
Oh, mate, if I could remember,
I hope you're all
I'd
there
say
for
it
that
again. Yeah. But no, like I was saying, like, took a punt on a pretty exciting bottle of a customer of ours, and definitely didn't disappoint. Really, really thrilled on this one.
And so that's always a good idea. If you're in doubt, yes, we do want to hear about your next favourite bottle of wine and what we should be drinking next.
Yeah.
Always a good idea because we like to learn and discover new things. I'm going to have another glass of that before we move on, if that's all right. Because I just there's something else in that I can't quite get my head around. I think it's going to open up with a little bit of time. So yeah, I mean, does this imported deal exclusively in Spanish wine, or?
No, so this comes through Stu Northey at Anonymous Wine. They're based out of Victoria. But Kelvin up here in New South Wales does a very, very good job of taking care of us. And like I said, it just sort of came into the shop, dropped the name of the bottle, didn't really know who it was, quick little, Google search, quick little call around, and managed to find that the guys at Anonymous bring this in. And this says it's just never been a brand or a name that I've really heard lots of, scream and shout about. But it's just like, I think it's that real, like, underdog kind of punching Spanish wine. Because you see a lot of Spanish wines that come through, get a little bit of hype around them, and they blow up in price. But this has just been outstanding. Yeah,
and I think that's, not only the challenge, but part of the fun for us is to find those things. And, it's easy to find them in Australia and New South Wales and, 6 hours that way than it is to find them in Tenerife in Spain.
Oh, it is. And I think there's a lot of that, like, in the job that we do, there's a lot of, like, we might know what we know, but at the same time, anyone that walks to the door knows something we don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
Kind of thing. And it's like, we absolutely love to hear about, like anything you might have tried in Tuscany on holiday, or in Vienna, or in Argentina or Mendoza or something like that. Like anything like that, just no time out of my day to at least give it a Google search and see what people are saying. So
yeah, 100%.
But this is a winner.
I think for anyone serious about booze and serious about learning about booze, there's a common thread amongst us all in the fact that the one thing we know for sure is how much we don't know and how much more there is to go, which is why we have the greatest job in the world. I think because it's endless. There is going to be no boundary to what we get to discover and taste and do moving forward.
No, and it's like at the same time we spend weekends going out to country New South Wales, and you'll learn more in a shed out there than you will sitting at a desk in here. So
100%. And again, going back to the experience of what you presented me with in terms of opening a bottle that I knew nothing about was very much what I tried to create in Dubbo across the weekend. You come to gin tasting, you only get 6 gins, 6 tequilas, 6 spirits, 6 whiskies, whatever it's going to be. But you might not know any of them, and I might talk a little bit about them for 10 or 15 minutes and quickly rush them through, but it's going to be brand new a lot of the time. So it's quite interesting to see how people reacted to that, and quite encouraging and exciting to see that from a consumer's point of view, who, might only be a part-time booze lover. They've probably got a full-time job in something else, and they, learn about booze in their spare time, or they might not have even touched started to scrape the surface on whatever alcohol and spirit they're interested in, just to see them absorb knowledge. I think that's so great about everything at the moment, and you see it in food, you see it in textiles and clothing and everything. People want to know where it's come from, what's the provenance, why it tastes or feels or does what it does, which is exciting, and I think it's good for us as well because it keeps us in a job.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I can say it personally, you obviously get caught up being here, right in the middle of the CBD, staring at screens all day, blah, 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 blah. And I learned it firsthand on Friday morning. If you drop me into a vineyard, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I pretend like I know about all of this stuff on a sales angle, but like from the ground up, no clue.
Boy, vine.
Yeah,
Pick.
yeah, exactly.
Boy, barrel.
It's
Lift.
like, so this is where this comes from.
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah.
Awesome. Should we move on to some spirits and whiskies? I'll grab some whiskies.
Yeah, I think so. You did touch earlier on, obviously talkings and writings about bottles that mightn't necessarily exist or might necessarily be real in the place that they are. And I mean, that's obviously something that affects both of our industries pretty heavily. And I've had like very brief experiences with those sort of conversations, but I've got opinions.
Yeah, so just it was quite an interesting thing. So when I was travelling out to and from the mighty Central West here in New South Wales, one of the things that I started just reading about and went down a rabbit hole was the idea of really expensive, lucrative, rare wines and the status that comes with that, and then sort of what that means for whiskey as well, and also then, you know, the market of faking those wines, and particularly in wine, it's prominent in whiskey and spirits as well, but probably more obvious in wine at the moment, probably because it's been spotlighted a little bit more. But just sort of that idea, that concept of taking a once in a lifetime drink, you know, it could be a whiskey or a wine or whatever, but like, what does that actually mean? At the end of the day, you have 700 or 720, 750 mils of liquid that has come from somewhere, and you really have to, as a consumer, as a drinker and as a fan, buy into the provenance of what that is, whether that's an age, ownership. Has someone famous touched it? Has it come from a very specific place in, granted, is it like from a specific plot of land somewhere, or a certain point in time? And again, sort of thinking about it, and what sort of got me thinking about some of these things and what we're going to talk about tonight is, I've been very lucky to, I've been working full-time in whiskey for about 6 years now, part-time with my own businesses for about 8 or 9, and sort of drinking seriously for about 10 or 11 years now. And I've been very lucky to try some stuff that's been very rare in that time, sort of 50, 60-year-old Glenlivets, from the 50s and 60s, 60s and 70s Highland Park, 50s Lefroy, Linkwood from 1943, pre-war brandies and things like, Port Ellens for, 30-year-old Port Ellens and that sort of thing. Whiskies and the bottles that go for, upwards of $5,000 and into the stratosphere now. Either where I've got them at bargains, by chanced out, or I've had friends that have shared them. But one of the things that's great about those things, I think, is that you can have a bottle of whiskey and not finish it all, and still have it a week or two later and share it and that sort of thing. Whereas with wines, you sort of, if you're not in that room then and there, they're gone. And what that means for someone, on that sub-30 younger age group trying to get into wines, if they don't have $500,000 to splash around and get access to those things, how do people get access to that? So I think, quite lucky, again, I did make the right decision to go to the world of spirits rather than the world of wines when I was 19 years old. I think that's a very, very smart way to do it. But so I just sort of dug around the back. That's a new one. I haven't had this thing crash before.
No? Minicam's just fucking up?
Yeah.
Back.
Way back.
What are these? What is this?
So this is a Klein Leash. 24-year-old Glenkeith. All right,
24-year-old Glenkeith.
So all you've missed in that little spiel of our software crashing down is us pouring some booze here.
Thank you for staying on board, by the way.
Yeah. So what we've got here is a 24-year-old Glenkeith, bottled by Antique Lines of Spirits, which is a collaboration between Whiskey Antique, Zanzibar, Lines of Whiskey, Silver Seal as well.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But basically, not a whiskey we're going to talk about too much, but just sort of flavour this conversation of stuff that I can't afford to drink $700 bottles of whiskey every day. Someone who's worked in wine, how much access have you had being in the industry, as working as at restaurants and then in retail and going to tastings to try some of those really top end wines that, if a bottle was opened, sort of needs to be consumed then and there, and if you're not in that room, tough luck. Wait until next time someone's generous enough.
I think it's definitely a valid conversation to be had, on my end anyway. I think I've definitely tried some incredible wines and been lucky enough to be sat at a lot of tables that have shared some very, very good wines as well. But it kind of really breaks things down to a basic level, whereas wine for me is an experience. It's kind of that's all it is. A bottle of wine, any, like you said, 750ml bottle of liquid that you can take off the shelf can mean anything to anyone. It's about what it means to that person. So, whilst I've been on, sort of fair tours in Hong Kong, in Madrid, in London, all that sort of thing, taste some incredible bottles. But if you're just getting a splash and then trying it and then moving on to the next one, that's not going to really resonate with you in any way, shape, or form, as it will if you've traveled somewhere and someone has opened up their cellar for you and they're going to cook you dinner and you're going to drink 10 amazing bottles. Those bottles are going to be far, far, far more better, or far more
they're going to
delicious.
They'll resonate a lot more.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. And I think for me, especially, that's what makes wine so special. It's because I've had a lot of really, really good wine with some very average people, and I've had some really average wine with some very good people, and I'll tell you exactly which one I prefer to drink.
I know the answer to that one somehow.
So it's kind of I mean, not with shutting down the conversation, but I think that with these top end bottles, you're not paying for the wine, you're paying for the experience that you're going to do when you drink the wine. Yeah. If that makes sense. If you're going to open some incredible bottle of wine, you're going to have your friends around, you're going to have, some food cooked, you're going to, you're really going to enjoy it. Whereas that wine is going to taste different to you, whether you opened it with all your mates and enjoyed it, or whether you opened it in a room on your own and sat down and did whatever. That's just what I think.
It is, and I think it's very, very true. And it leads us into a bit of a almost controversial topic, and I'll sort of preface it by saying, when I first started here at the Oak Barrel, I used to buy a lot of, or not a lot, but a bit of wine off auction sites in that sort of, not crazy high tier, but in that sort of mid to higher tier brackets that you couldn't get, and were maybe old vintages and that sort of thing. And I used to buy a lot prior to that for myself off auction, so I sort of knew what I was looking for. I've now stopped doing that because I can't be guaranteed to know exactly what is in the bottle. And just like the wine world has been smashed with fakes in some very high profile cases in the past sort of 10 years, the old saying, particular vintage, at 23 of this from some French vineyard, they produced 100 bottles in total, and 5,000 bottles of it have been drunk in the past 50 years, because things are being faked quite a lot, and it's a very hard thing to police for a couple of reasons for me. I mean, things are a little bit better now, but so this is a bottle with a label on it. These are quite intricate labels, but certainly back in the day they're a lot simpler. And if you particularly had a older version of the same bottle, printing's that good, you can go and print a label bottle and refill it with something that's different or younger, but in the same sort of flavour profile, recork it, bottle it, and sell it. And there's been a lot of whiskey found in the past 10 years that has been faked. Macallan famously, when single malt whiskey was becoming quite prominent again in the 90s, went and bought a lot of their old bottlings back to put in a big Macallan archive in their distillery. And after some checking, turns out they bought back a lot of fakes of their own stuff. They didn't have it on hand. But the Macallan archive, in itself was full of fakes, and that was the official one. So what hope do we have as punters to know the difference? So there's that sort of element, but also I think going to what you're talking about, if you have a bottle of 1950 Macallan, that there was only 50 in the world, it probably cost you, 50 grand or something crazy like that, and you're going to open it with your friends and have that experience, if there's a suggestion that it might be a fake, are you going to come forward and say that? And sort of admit and go through the whole rigmarole of trying to get your money back and prove the provenance and go through that whole thing? Or do you keep stum, enjoy it with your mates, put that thought out of your mind, and just say, whether it is or not, it's irrelevant because, this I'm enjoying it for this reason, and I believe it is what it is, which is perfectly fine from the personal point of view. From from an industry point of view, you go, that's the worst thing in the world because we need to be finding them and weeding them out, and particularly those early ones. And Japanese whiskey is so valuable these days, and Hanyus and Karazawas and Kawasaki's, the labels are put on by hand, so they are skew-if, and there's no bottling codes or anything like that. Bottle, label stuck on by hand. That's what it is. So how can you tell a forgery for that sort of thing? So it's a really tough one and really interesting question that I've sort of been musing on the last couple of days, in terms of what that actually means. And what's the value of something going the other way? We've seen Australian whiskies and particularly Sullivan's Cove with some of their older stuff. Whiskey's going for, I think, $16,000 on. One went for a bushfire auction appeal. $16,000 for a bottle of Australian whiskey. But whoever drinks that is going to know they're getting a World Whiskey Single Cask of the Year, American Oak specific cask. They were sold and drunk before the award was won. Sullivan's Code had about 3 left on hand. One went to an auction in the UK, one went here, don't know where the other one is. That's a pretty special story you get to tell people. So I think there's 2 elements to it.
Just to put things just to make a very theoretical example is that the person that bought that Sullivan's Cove, they bought a bottle of Sullivan's Cove knowing that they were getting this single cask XYZ, that it was. They then take that home, they drink it, they have an incredible time with whoever they've drank it with, or they drink it on their own.
Yep.
Who knows? It gets drunk, it gets done, whatever, the bottle gets chucked in the trash, all the rest. Then 6 months later it comes out that bottle's fake. Who hurts in that situation?
Yeah. So I think it's not a case for this one because the bottle was come off direct from the distillery. There's absolutely no assumption that anything that Sullivan's Cove is being faked. But just as a hypothetical, for a bottle of that value, I think that at that point everyone's a loser. Because
are they though? Because you had that time, you had that.
But
that experience
wouldn't you feel?
that.
Wouldn't it taint it? Wouldn't you feel a little bit cheated?
Well, I mean, you've already done it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think personally, I would just feel a little bit cheated, knowing full well that what I thought I was drinking wasn't. And I almost feel a little bit embarrassed and dumb about it as well. If I brought this bottle to a party, saying, "Guys, this is a special occasion. We're going to drink this. This is what it is," and I told them the whole history of everything and the slope on the soil where
which
it was
is
grown,
all
the
part of.
Yeah, and if it turns out that I was lying or that I'd been duped, I think that would be sad. And I think also it would take away, say how many cases does Romney Conti release each year? About 500 cases.
I think it's a bit more than that.
Yeah, but whatever it is, it's relatively tiny. All of a sudden, if I'm saying, okay, I'm drinking one of the 10,000 bottles of this in the world, and then it turns out that it's not, it's number 10,001 or 10,005 or number 15,000 or 20,000, I think that diminishes it as well. But I think people are too scared to come forward sometimes, and particularly seeing that in wine, and God knows how much fake Macallan is out in the world sitting in collections, how much fake, Japanese whiskey is sitting out in the collections, some of the older stuff. We sort of, ideally as an industry, I'd like to see it all come forward and be presented, but no one. I think there's a real hesitance sometimes for people who have owned those bottles in big collections to
Yeah.
find out that 40% of the collection is fake and have to go through that whole
Yeah.
process. It's a really interesting concept. I don't, it's why I've really reneged on those really old bottles from auction, particularly anything with labels that is are quite simple. If I don't know where they've come from 100%, then it's not worth touching. Would I be a little bit more, adventurous potentially if it was my money, and I was just going to drink it myself? Yep, but when it's the oak barrel, you sort of go, if I stuff this up, I'm stuffing it up for someone else's name. So I have to be very, very careful about that.
I think about it as well because, like, I've definitely spent a good amount of money on certain bottles of wine that I probably paid more for than I should on certain vintages and things like that. And I've drunk them and I've enjoyed them, and my friends have enjoyed them, and like we've all had a good time that night amongst a plethora of other bottles. And like, if that bottle was fake and I found it out today, who loses? Really? Like, it's like I'm not endorsing
the
faking bottles, but exactly, the producer. But I'm saying, like, if you spend the money on that bottle and you drink that bottle, and like, if it is not what you expect it to be, absolutely, just go right ahead and go blah blah blah. But from what I understand with a lot of these high-end wine fakers is that they've got quite good palates, and they tend to put things together that are not too dissimilar from the real thing. And like I think I would struggle to pick a bad Dujac or something like that, to pick a bad Romani Conti or pick a bad Ponceau or something like that.
But wouldn't it be like? It's.
But I don't know. I just feel like
it's a real moral dilemma.
Yeah, like those older, rarer bottles. Are they something that is like a treat for your palate, or is it something that actually brings people together?
Yeah.
So if you go, I'm going to open a 60, like an 85 Sassicaia, and you guys should all come around, and everyone comes around and like everyone drinks it, and they like, like most people probably haven't drank 85 Sassicaia before, so it's like, oh yeah, that's like, it's good, whatever, you'll have a good time, and then later on that bottle turns out to be fake. Is it is it the end of the world?
It taps into something that I truly believe about, drinking anything as well. It is communal. It's meant to be shared. It should be enjoyed. It doesn't matter what the value is or how rare. And so I'm a firm believer in that. But it's wrong, and faking is wrong, and it punishes people. So, but going back to what you were saying, some of the these famous forgers that got away with it under like some of the biggest critics in the world, like underneath their noses, right in front of their faces. Should it be like it's almost a cover band, and you release in the style of that? And so you can get, I can't afford $6,500 for one bottle of wine. Even if I could get access to it, I can't afford it. Can I afford the $3,000 equivalent where there is heaps of it, or the $500 equivalent?
Yeah.
And I wonder if that would have been a long term, instead of going to jail, as most of them have nowadays, a smarter business plan is to create a in the style of, wine. But I mean, it's
well, I think that's already happened in the wine industry.
Yeah.
You see people replicating methods, but like the same time, wine is wine. It grows from the ground. You can't necessarily replicate things.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, the thing is, with whiskey, and we're getting closer. A lot of people are doing tests on like carbon dating and that sort of thing, but it's an imperfect science sometimes with what we're doing, which I've just sort of poured myself another whiskey before we sort of get too deep into the night. A similar sort of thing, something that I'm probably never going to try again, a 20-year-old Australian whiskey from the Smith's Agnaston distillery. So basically, if you're not familiar with Smith's, a very underground distillery, part of the Samuel Smith's and Sons family, now part of Yalumba. And they used to make distilled spirits, to do brandy, but they also did quite a fair bit of whiskey back in the day. So we're talking like 50s and 60s sort of way. And basically in 97, a bloke called Peter Wall, who was sort of caretaker managing the operation. The boss had gone on a sabbatical and sort of run away. Fired up this old still that had been decommissioned for 3 decades or so, and in 97, 98 and 2000 they ran some whiskey through it, decommissioned it in 2001, and they've been releasing those casks over the past few years. So they sort of come out in very, very small batches, and the 20-year-old is the very last of the 1997 vintage from that period, which we were lucky enough to get one bottle of. We opened a couple of weeks ago for the Aussie whiskey tasting, and just wanted to sort of share it because this is a whiskey that's sort of another end. It's a 20-year-old Australian single malt, which in itself is quite rare. I think it was about $200 when it was released. So there was about 180 bottles or something, sold out instantly. It was only offered to members of the Yalumba Wine Club. So really rare. It's been in probably tawny casks. It's big, it's juicy and sweet. It's a funny one that doesn't have the hype and the rarity because it's so small. It's flown under the radar of, you know, your whiskey hype at the moment. And it's so small that it's even got, you know, that it's disappeared before it started. Most of them have been, you know, drunk. But this is, I think, an ultimate example of what we've been talking about. Didn't cost an arm and a leg. I got to share it with 30 people in that room, and now I get to share it here, talk about it, share the experience with people, knowing full well that it's legitimate, that no one's faking these things. But it also, you know, it didn't break the bank at that price point where I would have to worry about the end of the world, you know, about those things. So I think, you know, in going full circle, exactly what you were talking about without spending, you know, $16,000 on a bottle, which is, you know, pretty crazy. For those playing at home, sweet. There was also an 18-year-old, which is a bit of the 2000 vintage, topped up with 98 and 97 over the years. Quite oak-driven, the 18, quite tannicky. This is much more balanced. This, I mean, still heaps of fruit and tawny type fruit, but yeah, very, very elegant. But a whiskey that, you know, we can share and without the fear of all these sorts of things. It's big. It's not big enough.
Like
it's 46.5, but it is a big whiskey. Like, it's not going to like doing this relatively last, I think was quite a smart move.
Yeah, this is syrupy.
Syrupy is a very good word for it.
Yeah.
Very, very good word. But yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a philosophical chat tonight about I mean, that's what happens when you spend 6 hours travelling each way and that sort of thing. And
that's true. Yeah, we're both pretty exhausted.
Yeah.
Alex Carter says though, would you not feel you've never tried that bottle, though you've had that experience driven? Yeah,
that's another point, and that's sort of what I mean. I think, like, yes, that experience at the moment would have been great, but afterwards, you feel like you've been duped. You feel like you've a little bit embarrassed because you've lied to all your mates.
Yeah,
and that's the, and actually, you haven't tried what you thought you tried. So I think it's a very good point, Alex.
It totally is.
But I think it harks back into part of the problem of eking out fakes across all the industries. Is people don't want to admit it.
No.
And unless you then turn around and say, I'm one of the famous people that got duped and we had a night on the faked whatever and try and make a positive out of it. Which, what's his name? Coke.
Bill Coke.
Bill Coke, a famous wine collector in America, who has almost certainly been duped by buying, I think it's Lafite 1700, so 18th century bottles.
Jeffersons.
Yeah, so they got TH.J written on them. They're, you know, presumably to be Thomas Jefferson wines. Turns out probably almost certainly they're not. But there's only 4 of them in the world, and so he's got, whether they're real or not, he doesn't care because he's suing everyone left, right and centre.
Yeah.
Whether the story is, yes, I've got the ones, or I'm suing everyone because I don't have the ones. Either way, I'm driving the narrative for this.
It's like those wines aren't built to last that long.
No, I mean, they're not meant to be drunk. So, but then is that even worse? I mean, we can get into and it's again, it goes back to the art world. You know, famous forgeries, and if you can paint a Mona Lisa down to the spot, like,
well, so that's exactly the thing. I think that, like, all of the hype behind it almost glorifies fakes. in a way where it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, oh, you, like I've heard people in person say, you got a Rudy bottle. It's like,
Yeah.
the guy's created his own legacy.
Yeah, and Rudy is currently serving time in America for.
Yeah.
He's going to be deported back to Thailand. When he gets out, Thailand or Indonesia.
I think it was Indonesian. Yeah.
But yeah, and if you don't know, you search Rudy or search the movie Sour Grapes,
Yeah.
which will tell
It's
you.
a very good movie.
Very good movie. And it'll sort of give context for a lot of what we've been talking about, and and probably show a lot of the characters we've been talking about today as well. There's nothing in the whiskey world equivalent yet because there hasn't been a bigger scandal.
Or we haven't caught them.
Yeah, but a lot of them came out of Italy, a lot of fakes out of Italy, which turned out to be all right because Italian bottlings have a tax seal across the top, and so the glue being, now the technology is getting good enough, when was the glue applied? Was the glue applied 60 years ago? Or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Now China seems to be a big one, particularly for the Japanese whiskies. A lot of the China, whether they're made in China or not, but a lot of the Chinese auction sites. But where we can combat that, one of the people that's been doing very, very well is Emmanuel John. Very, very smart whiskey historian and one of the best palates I've ever met. Works at the Old Alliance Bar out in Singapore and has written a book, a big coffee table book called the Encyclopedia of Scotch Whisky. Basically goes through all those 40s, 50s, 60s bottlings, original versions, how they should look, what you feel like your neck feel should be, what your corks should look like, what your tax seals should like. If there's been ever typos on labels, that's what the right ones are. So, for about $650, it's the cheapest investment you'll make if you're buying $20,000 bottles.
Yeah.
That's, not that I'm out there buying $20,000 bottles. And even if I did,
Not yet.
yeah, not yet. But if I did, if I was in that market in a big way, I wouldn't just read the book. I would call a manual, and this is why there are people in the world that exist like this. And I say, mate, I'm looking at this. I've got X amount of money to spend. I'm willing to pay you X amount. Just make sure everything I buy is legitimate. And I think there's people in the wine world that do that as well. So I think
100%. Yeah.
if you're going to spend the money, you'd be smart to almost as an insurance policy bring it out.
I think like a lot of the top chateaus and top domains have their own people like that. They're just like, stop our shit from.
Yeah, I think they're almost switched on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty, well, look, I think it's about time we wrapped up. A little bit of a looser after hours tonight in terms of thread, but I had fun talking about it and just musing about things.
Yeah. We're both kind of still on holidays, so.
Yeah, and the best thing is I came off holidays yesterday. I'm doing one day in the office here today, and then I'm back away tomorrow. So I'm really not in the work mood at all. So I'm just gliding through, which has been excellent. Thank you as always for all your questions. We encourage you, just like we did, to get out, spend some money in these regional towns in the last couple of weeks. We can assure you it's a lot of fun, and the people are very warm and appreciate you being out there, and will show you a good time no matter where you are. We will be back next week on Tuesday again.
I think so, yeah.
Tuesday, we're back on Tuesday again, where Joey will have a week of work under him, and I will be straight off the station. So, yeah, you're going to have to drive that one, I think, because I'm going to be pretty exhausted.
We'll be here.
Yeah.
We'll be here.
All right, thanks very much, guys. We will see you soon.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
Stay with me, and there we go. On now.